And we're live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, demons and cats of all ages. That's right. Fuck cats, by the way. I fucking hate cats. I'm sick of them. I put them in the classification with the goddamn French. Speaking of the French, this is the World War I stream, and I failed my self-control roll. Here's the thing. We are now to May and June 1917. We're going to try and get through both months, but May is particularly active. MC, take it away, sir.
Okay, we'll get the first thing to start off with is you have the collapse of the Irish Rebellion. Now, once again, the Irish Rebellion was fomented by, obviously there are a number of Irish patriots who didn't particularly care for British rule, and they had been chafing, and they've always been chafing against British rule.
Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot? I know no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
Well, there's that, and then you have the Germans. Basically, they were fomenting the revolution. And how did they do it? They did it in a number of ways. I mean, yeah, they were doing propaganda, but they were also literally arming the rebels. They were using their submarines to run guns into Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually an American aspect here too. The Hells Angels and the Pagans and motorcycle clubs like that were actually working with the Irish Republican Army, and they were arming them as well. There was an American aspect to that rebellion as well. And that extends far into the 80s even. There were
drives. Obviously, there were a number of Irish Americans that did, agree with the idea of separation from Great Britain, and but their input into the Easter Rebellion was limited to just some funding in certain areas. Boston was a big area. The IRA
didn't the Kennedys didn't Daddy Kennedy support the IRA?
Yeah, they did. All right, they were part of that. Yeah,
that's what I thought. So I mean, here's a way we can get the Americans actually into the conversation a little bit. I mean, do we want to elaborate on that at all, or are we just gonna brush over it and move on?
Well, it's something to keep in mind because it's causing American sentiment to start focusing more and more. America has a very isolationist tendencies, and it's these kinds of things, both like for the pro-British and anti-British, that focus the America's attention on the European theater more and more. It does start to take an aspect within our society, even with people saying, "Okay, we really don't want to go to war with these people," but there's more interest in it, in that they're following it on a daily basis.
Didn't we have a plan to take Canada?
Yeah, but that doesn't really mean much because, well, you got plan to take. You had the plan to take Mexico. You had a plan to take Cuba. You had a plan to take fucking Russia at one point too, and these are all around about the same times as well. So you had a plan to take over.
So we were not power hungry at all, right?
These are what you've done. What people are talking about. What they have to understand is these are war plans that the Pentagon is putting together in every single possible contingency they can think of.
Yeah, it's like Operation Northwoods, like the fucking the truthers like to bring up about 9/11. Oh, see, they had plans that they were going to crash a civilian airliner into the Pentagon. No, they were planning for it because guess fucking what? It actually ended up fucking happening, didn't it? That's what those plans basically were. They weren't going to really be affected in any way. They were just there in case of.
Exactly. Plan for the thing that you think is least likely to happen, just in case it does.
This is something that was once the idea of general staffs came into being. All right, and this is something people forget about. The German general staff led the way in how to do this, and they demonstrated how effective this kind of early planning could be. In fact, the von Schieffen plan was just another example. But von Schieffen wrote that in 1903, right? So you have these plans that you create that you are what if scenarios. How do you handle in case of this, in case of that? How do you go about it? And the United States had plans. Fardy's right. We had plans to invade Mexico. We had plans to invade Santo Domingo. We've had plans to invade Canada. We had plans actually to invade Japan and they gave them different colors. If we went to war with Great Britain, it was called War Plan Red. Okay.
Yep. I think Canada was blue, wasn't it?
I think that they were. I don't remember exactly which one it was. All right, but these are all contingency plans. This is how the general staff. It's not that they were presenting these because the politicians were thinking about going to war. It's the military on its own going, okay, if we're asked to do this, what do we need to do?
Yeah, it's kind of like if say World War II hadn't gone the way that it did, and Germany did in fact invade the UK, and then the American generals just go, right, where's that fucking book with that idea we had?
Yeah.
Well, and that was the whole reason for the creation of the Convair B-36 Peacemaker, to be able to do transatlantic strategic bombing. Thank God we never needed to do that, but even then they were creating things. They were designing their hardware if that plan had to be implemented.
Yeah.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. When you're looking at the Easter Rising, it didn't just go away. They say the rebellion, it collapses and the leaders surrender. Okay, sure. They do end up executing, I believe, 7 leaders, right? About.
Yeah. And what this actually ends up doing is just perpetuating supporters of the IRA because, well, you shot my uncle, you fucking bastard, I'm going to pick up a gun and fight you now.
Yeah, no, that's what I was getting to, absolutely, because they did what? They hung about 7 rebels. Okay. They then dealt with the Irish for 45 years. I mean, who really won that? I happen to think the Republic of Ireland has something to say about that.
well, see, they've pretty much got their own autonomy and all this kind of stuff. They've basically got what they wanted. They're just still officially under British thumb. But yeah, like it did go a whole long way for them. They did try the whole "let's blow everything up" kind of thing at first, and then when that didn't work, they did say, well, let's try the political route, and then they created Sinn Féin, which was a political party, and they went for elections and fucking everything.
Isn't the IRA still a thing, though, right? They are still a thing.
Okay, so what the funny part about that is that they thought it was really funny to be terrorists up until 9/11. And then when everyone said, right, we're going to shit on terrorist organisations from a great height, the Irish Republican Army decided they were going to, at that point, disband and just be their political wing from now on. Now, that lasted, I think, about fucking 8 years. And then people sort of started to hoard guns and do silly things and get busted with explosives and stuff again quite recently. So, yeah, it's sort of on a build-up again.
But the levels that it was at before are nowhere near what it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Let's get back to the First World War.
Where it's at right now versus where it was is night and day.
Actually, Falcon, we're talking about the First World War. We're talking about the Easter Rebellion. So, yeah, hold your horses, buddy.
I'm sorry.
Hold your horses. I know you want to talk about some airships. We'll get to that, buddy. Hold your horses, all right?
I have actually very little to say on it.
Because, no, this is where the Americans, like the Kennedys, started throwing money towards the Germans, pretty much, if you think about it. See, I'm wrapping it back around. That's why I said hold your horses, Falcon. The Germans are supplying the rebellion. The Americans, large portions of New England, are supplying the Irish rebellion. They're pretty much working with the Germans, are they not?
Well, I wouldn't say poor proportions. I would say there are definitely significant contingents, but overall they're not. You got to understand this. it's still a minority of people that are supporting this. Okay, they make up large populations, minority populations within like Massachusetts, but they have major like little enclaves in Boston, and New York has had a big enclave at this time that were supporting, that were trying to support the Irish. And when the German, were telling them, hey, we'll help you fund these guys over if you help us out, they were more than willing to turn a lot of money over to the Germans to help fund the arming campaign. Now, once it fell apart, it was tamped down after the execution within the United States. They lost a lot of U.S. funding, direct U.S. funding, but it still exists.
Now, this one, Falcon does have a right to bitch a little bit about. But if you look at Robert and JFK himself, did they keep funding the IRA on the down low? Because I don't know. I know their dad funded them.
From the government standpoint, no. All right. Whether the family was involved in some of that stuff, you can say that it's arguable, but it definitely wasn't a funding issue from the United States itself.
Okay, and that's all I was asking, because I really didn't know, and I was kind of curious. So, yeah, go ahead and go on to the 3rd of May, if you want.
Right, 3rd of May, we got the airship, the L-20 is returning from a raid in Scotland, and it wrecks in Norway, which shows you just what happens to airships when it rains, and the wind blows in the North Sea. Mm-hmm. All right. You have the German, I'm just going to say, the 3 Irish rebel leaders were executed. They just summarily executed them, which, of course, is going to lead to what Farty was talking about, where the violence is going to continue. Excuse me. The L-ship L7 is destroyed off the Schleswig coast. Okay. Basically, the airship didn't make it back. Now, this was if I'm not mistaken, this was an operation where the British this was a British aerial operation where they actually shot it down, right? Which is pretty impressive because it was shot down, if I'm not mistaken, by a seaplane, a British seaplane.
Oh, really? So this isn't when they begin what is it? Is it fragging? Flak. Yeah, flak. Yeah.
Flak guns are simply artillery pointed straight up. During the Second World War, that's exactly what they did. The German 88 was a tank gun. It was a main gun for a tank. They used it for artillery, flak, anything they could stick it on. And then during the First World War, the very early artillery was flak was literally artillery with a stack a bunch of things underneath its front wheels.
That's what I was asking. So this is when they start to figure out flakking, and you blanket your airspace and pepper the fucking planes.
Well, they had experimented around this time with that, but you also have to remember, airships, they only moved at about 35 to 45 miles per hour. They were really, really slow. And they were really big, so it's not hard to hit them.
And also, too, Dodge.
The next few days, go ahead.
Also, too, Dodge. The terms just flak. They don't have to put the ing on the end. That's not actually a word. It sounds really retarded.
Whatever. Be a dick. I'm the only one in the chat, so no one heard you be a dick yet.
If y'all keep anything in mind of any point during the war, for airships, this is one of those points where people really start to question, is this a good idea? Because they're so easy to shoot. Obviously now they're easy to shoot down. We're losing them. Germans are losing them constantly, and they require so much logistical support. Which makes more sense, an airship or 1,000 airplanes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and on the 5th of May, you have the LZ-85 brought down by British gunfire. So you're starting to see ground fire now take effect. Like I said, the L7 was actually shot down by a British seaplane.
Yeah, no, and
think about that. The British this is one of the first versions of seaplanes. And this is 1916. Can you imagine what landing in the North Sea was like on these things?
It
really was
16. I wrote 17. I might have jumped us up a year. My bad, guys. I'll fix that.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't be landing that on the North Sea anyways, man. Fucking, you simply wouldn't. Like, Mother Nature just come up and slap you out of the sky with a wave, and you just turn into a million pieces.
Well, seaplanes today are so much more rugged than they were back then. So today, overall, you don't want absolute like glass smooth water. You actually want a little bit of chop. But especially in the North Sea, you usually don't get a little bit of chop. Usually goes from really, really nice glass to, oh, now we have 6-foot seas and you can't take off or land.
Yeah, you don't have a little bit of chop. You've got a full swing with a machete.
You can stop in the ocean once.
Well, no, here's the thing. Falcon, you had posted on Twitter the other day. You had posted the airship with the gun platform on it. How often were they actually doing that? Because that looks really dangerous to the crew of the goddamn airship.
It's actually not. You're basically you're standing on a bunch of some wood planks like you'd be standing on a deck behind a house, and it's a very stable shooting platform that's not going very fast. And it was actually very common. By this point in the war, pretty much every single airship had that because, well, the easiest way to shoot something to shoot an airship is to get up above the guy and shoot and dive and pull power and put it down into a dive and just pepper it with bullets. And if they don't have those turrets, if they don't have those guys on top, then nobody's shooting at you.
Okay, when it comes to flak, you're looking at airship. Yes, they had individual cells within the balloon, so to say, to where, yeah, you can pepper one and it'll stay afloat, whatever, so to say. But I mean, it's like a shotgun round, right? So you're damaging more than one cell at a time.
It's more like a hand grenade going off in the air, basically. The whole idea is that it detonates and then it's like a fragmentation grenade going off. The benefit of that is that it won't just take out one cell like a bullet typically would, but because it's throwing out so much shrapnel, you're probably going to get 2, maybe 3 bags.
And then at that point, you basically got to dump all of your ballast and hope that maybe you'll stay afloat.
Yeah.
Will it ignite the hydrogen, though? I mean, how flammable is hydrogen really? I mean,
well, so you'd have to get a couple of lucky strikes with fragmentation off a metal post on the inside of it, and the stoichiometric ratio would have to be just right at that point in time when
basically everything. You have to be very, very, very lucky. The outer covering of the thing. Any wood in the superstructure, that you're gonna catch that on fire first.
It also depends on how far away the shell detonates.
Hydrogen is also hydrogen. There's more than one way to set it off. People forget this. Yeah, everyone thinks about a spark, right? But pressure can do it too. Okay.
Yes. So
if you create a pressure wave of some sort within there, like an explosive detonating in there, it could set off just from the concussive pressure alone. Hydrogen in oxygen environment is very unstable. It wants to combine. It's just ready for an excuse.
Well, the thing that the airships have got going for them, though, in that respect, is that the bags are kept at basically a single atmosphere. There's really fuck all pressure in them, so they've got a lot of movement, and a lot of play on the inside of them. But it does definitely depend on how far away the shell detonates from the airship, because the whole point is you don't actually have to hit it, you only have to get close, and the fragmentation does the rest.
Yeah, no, and I remember the Hindenburg had 8 individual cells, I believe. So you're looking at 5 to 8 cells within this airship that are completely sectioned off. It's almost like think about the whole of the Titanic and how they set that up. That's how I kind of envision the airship set up.
In a certain way. But so let's move on though. You have the Qasim Shireen in Western Persia is occupied by the Russian forces. The Russian forces are basically moving along. They've captured all this area. In fact, they could clear down into here, all right, and actually start moving toward Baghdad. Right,
And in
you'll
fact,
see that later in this month. They're going to come. They're carrying us the battles all the way through here. This is of course against the Turkish forces. All right, they're basically avoiding most of this mountainous area here. Yeah, they're fighting, but it's really more of a holding action while they're trying to get in here and take Iran from both sides.
And in fact, later this month, the Russians will meet up with the British a bit further south. They'll link up.
You have the Serbian government is basically moving into Sri Lanka. Basically, they're still falling back. The British and the French governments conclude the Sykes-Picot. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's Pico.
Picot. All right, agreement as to the eventual partition of Asia Minor. All of this, they're all deciding how they're going to carve all this up and who's going to be responsible for what. And in fact, the British are claiming all of this.
Hey, I would read it, but I think it'd be better from either Farty or UMC. Loafer posted. Read that, you guys.
My paternal grandfather was gassed and repatriated in 1917 in East Lancashire infantry. All right, it took you long enough to get to this date. Just a thought. See it. Well, you know what? We're going to talk about that in a little bit here too, because what happens is these later agreements where they're talking about these war agreements back in the 13th. But Lieutenant General George Mine succeeds Lieutenant General Sir Brian Mahone as the General Commanding Officer of British forces in Sri Lanka, right, to help stiffen up the Serbs. Agreement signed in Berlin to reemployment of British and German prisoners of war. Basically, what they're saying is they signed an agreement. Now, this is interesting because during the middle of this absolute butchery that's going on, these guys are still talking to one another in with quote unquote mentality of gentlemen's agreements. If you capture our forces, here's how you can put them to work, and here's what you can put them to work on and what you can't put them to work on. It's just it's kind of insane. Quash in East Prussia is occupied by British forces. An agreement is signed in London to transfer the British and German wounded and sick prisoners of war to Switzerland. So basically, they signed an agreement to, if you've got wounded and sick prisoners, he's talking about that exchange that his paternal grandfather was repatriated on. This was probably under this agreement right here, where he was delivered to Switzerland, and from Switzerland he was delivered on home back to Great Britain. Austrian forces begin their offensive in Trento. Once again, we forget this is a world war. And you're talking up in Italy, in the Tarantino area. Up in these mountains. So...
yeah, you can just see that last little line there as it's read out in the little page there. You can just see that updated to this day and age, where back then it says Austrian offensive in the Tarantino begins. Nowadays it'd say Austrians offended by Tarantino movie.
Allied blockade of the Hejaz coast to assist the revolt of the Sheriff of Mecca, or a Sharif of Mecca. right? So we're back down to the Middle East, and if I'm not mistaken, it's over here.
It's
you know,
near
you know what would be
Israel.
nice? Like, if they just, shelled Mecca into dust, there'd be a whole lot less problems right now.
Well, first of
I'm
all,
just
Mecca
saying.
is right here. So to shell Mecca, you're talking, 30 miles inland, so you'd have to put it right across here, and then you could try and attempt to shell Mecca. Shelling Mecca is not going to be something that's going to be all that easy to do.
Not only that, but you have to remember that is one of the most holy cities in Islam.
That's why I'm saying we would have a lot less issues right now if it was shelled in 1917. Just saying.
I disagree.
Go ahead.
I really think that, remember, the people in the Middle East, they tend to keep grudges for a very, very long time. I think that would have made everything a lot worse. They'd have just kept the grudge until today.
He has a point. They're still bitching about the Crusades. That was like 1,000 years ago.
This is the kind of region that you're talking about. Well, look what's here. Look how this is desert.
Yeah, it's desert, but it's also mountains. Take a hill and shell the city. I mean, Robert E. Lee would tell you how to do it. It's not hard.
At this point in time, what you're starting to see is the British. They are trying to foment a revolution against the Turks. All this is Turkish territory at this point.
I want to dig into that. I was waiting for that to actually come up. Since we started this series, the British lied. They fucking lied. They told the Arabs, "You will have your own state. Palestine, you will have your own state." And then they created Israel. They lied. They lied.
Well,
there's no other way around it.
Before you say that they lied, did they allow the state of Saudi Arabia to come into being?
They did. That is true.
Okay. So when you talk about some of this stuff, all right, and that you're going to allow the Arabs, it kind of depends on which tribal unit you're referring to. If you're talking about the Sauds, right, king of Saudi, Saudi Arabia is basically the kingdom of Saud, right? They basically handed them Saudi Arabia. They gave them the best prizes. They gave them.
Yeah, and you're right. And what they give the Palestinians? Dog shit.
What did they owe the Palestinians?
The Palestinians and the Egyptians both rose up during World War I, right?
No,
they made a deal to get them fully
rose, but the Palestinians didn't. No.
Well, at least the Egyptians, and they did fuck all for Egypt. I'm telling you, the British played it dirty here.
The British did not. You can say that, but Egypt itself is an interesting study. Okay, they didn't betray Egypt. Okay, and in reality, what they did was say, okay, we'll have a deal with your king, and the Egyptian king initially tried to stab him in the back. That's why they seized Egypt.
Go ahead and continue. Go ahead and give me pushback. I've been wanting to have this conversation.
Yeah,
like I said, I've been waiting for this moment.
The reason, and instead of deposing him, they basically started giving him orders and said, if you don't listen to what we're saying, we're going to depose you. But basically, because of the actions, the British who did have forces in here, basically in Alexandria was really where their main initial beginning starting point was. They didn't move into Cairo until basically the king of Egypt, all right, who was quote unquote nominally one of their allies, kind of started doing some backhanded kind of deals with the Turks. Now, in fairness to him, this whole area here is controlled by the Turkish Empire. Where's the British Empire? Well, they're on the oceans. They come sailing in, and
there's two ships in their port.
I mean, it's like, okay, these guys are could be considered a bigger threat. The British were basically on the other side of that, saying, no, we're the bigger threat. And so it is what it is. The British then said, okay, we're going to take over. because the main thing they wanted was right here. The main thing that the British could not afford to have stopped was the Suez Canal.
Yes, absolutely. I concur on that point. I totally agree with you. You take the Suez Canal, and the British, their navy, is now out of the game.
Well, not out of the game. It's made it much more difficult because now they can't just sail back forces. All right, you got to remember what were they using the Suez Canal for? Well, look how much quicker it is to get forces from India.
That's what I'm saying. That throws the British Navy out of the game. Really, it does. You can say they can sail around. Sure, they can. You're absolutely right.
But you're at many months on your travel.
Yeah, you're out the game, dude. You're out the game.
Well, you have to change your priorities, and the problem is India. You can't easily get to India. Travel between India becomes difficult.
It's not as drastic as all of that. Like, the British are nowhere near out of the game at this point because they've got their own fleets. But you remember, they've also got the Commonwealth. They've got India, they've got Australia, they've got New Zealand and all this kind of stuff. Now, right, you lose the Suez Canal and you got to travel all the way around. No, fuck that. That's why they've got such a large navy. They've already got ships down south here, which we can put up into the fucking... into New Saudi Arabia and all that kind of stuff. And the British have already got their own stuff up in the Mediterranean, which they can do with there. The only thing is we're just cut off from each other now. That's it. They've just cut us in half.
What's interesting about, if you take a look at this is a good spot to do something here. Right here, if you want to talk about what's British, this is British, Indonesia is British. Obviously, Sri Lanka and India are British. Okay?
Actually, Indonesia's Dutch.
Indonesia's Dutch at this time?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but Singapore and Malaysia are British. This is all British.
Yes.
So this is all British here. Okay. You can say that this is Dutch here, which is, let's be honest, the Dutch were nowhere. The Philippines are actually American.
Yep.
At this point in the war, the Philippines are a U.S. endeavor. All of this, however, with the exception of Thailand, is French.
See, this is the benefit of having empires, because you've got resources on the other sides of things. It's just, it's not very viable to have them cut off.
There we go. My mouse was giving me problems. But this here, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, this is all French. And I don't know, is Myanmar... India is British, but I don't know if Bangladesh, and I think Bangladesh was British, but I don't know if Burma. I think Burma was.
I thought Myanmar was a U.S. territory for a while, or am I wrong?
No. Burma, that was never a U.S. territory. You see the U.S. fighting there in World War II, but it was never a U.S. territory.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Okay, thank you. I stand corrected.
It could be English. This could be British. I don't know for sure.
It had this a large element of British, but we didn't really ever see that as part of the Commonwealth or the colonies or anything like that. We did claim it, but it sort of didn't really sort of do much with it until World War II.
Thailand, believe it or not, remains independent during this time frame.
Yep.
Huh.
This was also called Siam at one point.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you have Siamese cats, because that's where they come from.
Okay. Northern Mesopotamia is occupied by Russian forces. Kazakhstan in northeast of Baghdad is taken by Russian forces. Now, what's interesting, what they're referring to, all right, is they're talking about they've got forces all the way down into right here. These are all Russians. So the Russians, in a lot of ways, they were losing against they were losing their battles here against the Germans in this area, right? And in the Ukraine, they were losing battle after battle through here, and they were losing massive troops in these areas, right? But they were winning down here. They were making great headway. Well, I mean, they had already taken Tibet, they'd taken Zajin. I don't know if they had taken Tehran yet, but they'd already moved down, and they were moving into these areas. So they were against the Turks. They were very, very successful. I think Marshad they'd already taken because they'd come in this way to take the eastern part of Iran. So it's not all bad news for the Russians.
Well, and okay, so Rasputin at this time, he's still hobnobbing with the Tsar's wife and taking care of the kid, right? At this point in the war, because Rasputin, his death was, well, when that happens, we have to discuss it in depth. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but Rasputin basically dies. He's at the end of the year. The beginning of next year.
Okay, so we are getting closer though, because he is wheeling and dealing right now.
Yes, he is. He is at this point. He is in the Russian. He's moving through the Russian court. I won't say that he's part of the court, but because he was never officially part of the court. All right, but he is. He is dealing with the Romanov's son, the Tsar's son.
How do you think he was able to calm the son? I mean, seriously, isn't there something weird about this whole story? It seems odd to me.
It's a matter of, I mean, how do Indian mystics, all right, how are they able to control their blood flow?
So you think he was special? There was something about him.
I think he was a hypnotist, and that the human body is an amazing thing. I think that everyone has the ability to do a lot of the things that we would consider, unbelievable. But I think everyone has that capability. It's just a matter of whether or not you spend the time to do it. And hypnotism does, you can get people to do things with their body that they wouldn't normally be able to do. I mean, there are times when they've hypnotized people to be aboard, and then they've had other people walk on them in between a chair where their feet and their head are like their forehead are the only thing doing it, and people walk across their backs as if they're stiff as a board and they don't move.
Well, there is that game, light as a feather, stiff as a board. I heard it works. I've never tried it, but
also keep in mind a lot of stuff is dependent on self-discipline. If you have the discipline, you can very easily hold your breath to the point of blacking out.
No, you're right. And when it comes to like light as a feather, stiff as a board, what is it? One person lays down, 3 others take 2 fingers from each hand, and they raise the person up. They're chanting while they do it. It's almost like they're hypnotizing themselves, right? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, the human body is an amazing thing. It can do more than we utilize on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I think the ability to control the bleeding, which is what Rasputin could do with Nicholas's son, right? That was the big thing, because he had the blue blood disease where he had what I'm trying to think of what they call it.
Hemophilia.
He had hemophilia, whereas if he'd get a simple cut, it wouldn't stop bleeding. Well, with Rasputin's help, he could control that to a large extent. So it wasn't deadly.
Well, see, like there's a lot of things that can be explained about it. Like his knowledge of anticoagulants wouldn't have been completely unheard of at that point in time. And then there's like the punishment that he took. Like, okay, poisons. It's not a fucking science. You can fuck poisons up real easily. And then they shot him, three times or something like that? Okay, yeah, well, let's look at the type of firearm that would have typically been used. It'd be around something like the .32 caliber, and that's a fucking pathetic round. And especially back in those days, it was absolutely pitiful. Now, you have a look at hang on. Have a look at the kinds of clothes that he was wearing, because remember, he's in Russia. He's rugged up and shit like that. it'd be absolutely plausible for a 32 caliber bullet to be stopped by some dude's clothes.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
dude,
And
no. I'm pushing back on this one. He was shot 3 fucking times, and then they had to dump him into the fucking river in Moscow, and he still swam around, motherfucker. Like, dude, this guy was intense. At least.
Yeah.
well, Mad Dodge, keep in mind that 32 automatic, even in the 50s and 60s, is equivalent to a modern lower end 380. It's a very, very anemic round, especially back then. And the tolerances back then for machining were a lot greater. And remember, this is Russia, so they're even greater. So there's a lot of velocity just lost because of the tolerances. And it's cold, so the powder is burning a whole lot slower. And the guy's wearing heavy clothing. Some people still believe that the Glazer safety slug, the FBI and many police departments used to use it here in the States. That a lot of people, including my own father, believes that they stopped using it because it was too effective. No. Outside of somewhere like Miami, Florida, where it's always hot and nobody ever wears a jacket, it makes sense. It's very effective. Go up to North Dakota, it falls flat on its face because it just cannot penetrate.
Yeah,
I would like to point out, you can say what you want about the older firearms, but they were bigger rounds and they hit harder. Do you want to get shot with a goddamn musket, dude?
Nah, dude.
Because that solid 50 fucking caliber
we're not talking
round.
muskets here.
That's
we're talking the beginning of new rounds. This is the transition into modern firearms, yes, but you got to remember Russia's transition into the modern age was a lot more, let's say, ineffective than the rest of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, and also too, Dodge, like this was like a 32 caliber round. Like 32 caliber is 32 caliber, mate. You don't chuck musket balls down a 32 caliber.
No, but what I'm saying though is the powder charge. Sure, maybe the powder in one round was light and it didn't penetrate, but then in the next round it could be over penetrate. You don't know back then because everything was not an exact science.
Well, actually, we do know enough to know that if anything, the rounds were going to be more anemic than up to standard.
On average, compared to the quality control for the Western nations, yes, that's very true. The quality of the Russians' equipment, their powder, and everything else was obviously inferior.
Well, it was hit
Also,
and miss,
guys,
right? That's the only point I'm trying to make him see. It was hit or miss, right?
It was hit and miss, but it was most likely going to be miss more than a hit.
Not only that, but you also have to keep in mind it's really, really, really cold there. Powder burns a lot slower when it's cold. The Second World War M1 rifle, that thing was overgassed constantly because they wanted it to also be able to work in really cold conditions. If you're out in Arizona, your powder is going to burn very easily. One of the old sniper tricks is to lay your rounds out in the sun so the powder will burn faster. If you're in Russia and it's 30 below and it's a pistol and the quality control is a little shoddy, you don't expect it to really do much of anything.
That's not saying that. That's still not saying that. Man, I was just right in one regard. I don't care who you are. If you've taken 3 bullets, you've still taken 3 bullets. Yeah.
I understand. I understand. I'm only trying to say, don't think it's like you're gonna go buy some 9mm, today's 9mm, and think it's gonna be the same effect. It's not.
Well, no, and the thing is also, you gotta think about, they dumped him into the river, and he still swam. I mean, there were rumors that he fucking lived through it.
There were things, but that's coming up, and we'll talk about. We'll revisit this again. The second military service bill extending compulsion to married men passes the British House of Commons. See, before it was only single guys.
Yeah, so like, yeah, we touched on this last episode. Basically, they've gone and said, right, we're going to have conscription, except for people who are in like important places, like doctors and specialist factory workers and stuff like that. Married men aren't included, and if you're too ill, we won't take you as well. So basically, what happened? They said, right, we need 100,000 men, and then at the end of it, they said, right, we only got 50. What happened to the rest of them? Well, see, 10,000 were too lame, 20,000 were married, and another 20,000 are in really important jobs. And then they've gone, well, fuck, okay, so we need the people in the important jobs to stay there. We really can't take the lame ones. You know what? Just because they're getting their dick wet doesn't mean they can't go to war either. So the married men, they can come next.
Well, here's the thing. In the United States, there is a clause with our draft. If you are a single child, like an only child, and you have no heir, they will not draft you. Is that the same in the British system?
No. In fact, if you find a bullshit excuse and they think it's a bullshit excuse, they'll shoot you for it. So it doesn't matter. You don't have any heir, they'll still shoot you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, now this is just on that.
Proud to be an American.
Just on that, like real quick, the whole point on shooting them and all this kind of stuff. Like this is back in the days when like capital or corporal punishment, like being shot for fucking a lot of menial things was an actual thing. Like guys were getting shot for suspicion of desertion.
Yeah, but the thing is, man, even World War I era, the United States, if you had no heir to continue your family name, they would not draft you. MC, am I wrong?
No, they would. They kind of yes and kind of no. You could apply for an exemption, which they generally granted. Is how they did it. You could still, if you wanted to volunteer, they would let you volunteer. There were very few times they did like what everybody knows about from what's that, Saving Private Ryan, right? There was very did that happen? Yeah, but it's notable because it's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. Just
like the Sullivan brothers were all serving aboard the same ship when it got sunk. All 5 of them died.
Yeah, no, and like, well, I'm a parent. I have sons. I'm turning 35. 36 is a cutoff. We go to war with Iran, I could be drafted, right?
You could be drafted no matter what. The idea, I'm telling you now, this is the thing. People don't realize. The draft age, they have contingencies for drafting every male. Okay? They don't care what your age is.
You ever seen a show called Dad's Army, Dodge?
No, sir.
Right, yeah, go look it up. It's a British comedy show, but it's actually based on an actual reality thing. Like, while World War II was going on, they mobilised this thing called the Home Guard. And it was anybody who was too sick to sign up, who wasn't old enough to sign up, or was too old to sign up.
Well, no, the Confederates had the Home Guard as well. I know exactly what the Home Guard is, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, and
the Home Guard actually really came in handy.
You guys had the same thing too.
You had
civil defense.
Crap. Okay, the Home Guard actually came in really in handy, because at one point there are certain people, children and the old geezers can't really do much of anything. Have them sit in this one spot and identify airplanes, aka the Observer Corps. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Signal Corps or whatever.
No, the
Observer.
Oh, wasn't Cabby in the Signal Corps? Didn't he say that?
Cabbage was part of the Signals. Yes. But that's a separate. That's what we call Signal Corps today bears absolutely no, relation to what it was like back in these days. It does come from this point, but signals at this point are okay. Yeah, there's a few radios in the upper command, and field wires being run around. Okay, but that's the extent of it. That's the extent of the Signal Corps. It's not like it is today. it's not part and parcel because of, I mean, radio communications is so much more advanced today that signal cores have to be, basically integrated with every major unit because they have to communicate that way. You're going to have, they're going to be a major part of every freaking like brigade. Is the brigade's going to have some element, some signal core element with it.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead and move on to the next one. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I feel like we've been skimming over these, like just reading off dates and not really discussing it. So
and that's fine. The agreement is concluded between Great Britain and France regarding respective claims in Turkish territories. They're basically already coming back with how they're going to carve up the Ottoman Empire when they win.
Well, no, no, that's I can't hear you, Farty. Real quick, you go next. The British did the same thing in the Revolutionary War, right? Like that's what they do. That's just what they do. Go ahead, Farty.
Yeah, well, this is something that's a follow-on of something that we mentioned in the last episode, where basically everyone like Belgium and Italy and Greece and all them. And I'd made mention that, basically everyone bar France and England get fucking nothing. And it's basically between France and England who gets what. And this is the part where they chop up fucking the Turks. So you notice that no one else is in that little agreement?
Yeah, that's very true. Even the Russians are being excluded from this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, the war turns out a certain way, so you can say that they didn't deserve it, but at the same time, they're already backstabbing one of their major allies that's helping them. Well, that's the Russians. They're already saying that when it comes right down to it, Russia's not going to have any of the spoils from the Ottoman Turkish Empire. It's all going to be going to them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, the Air Board is formed in Great Britain on the 17th of May. And basically what the Air Board is that basically the formation of a panel of governmentarial monkeys and advisors and shit to basically say, right, well, we're going to take this aeroplane thing seriously now, so we may as well start standardising on our equipment and start, getting training together and tactics and making an actual, this is basically the prelude to the actual Royal Air Force. And on the 18th of May, this is where we mentioned up before with the Russians moving south, the detachment of Cossacks from the Russian force in West Persia effects junction with British Army on the Tigris. So that's where they've met up.
Okay, so when they actually meet up, how does it play out? Do you know? Because the British end up, like I said, in my opinion, they betray the Arabs. They do. But MC has a different view on it. What happens as these two forces converge?
It's basically two allies meeting, and same thing as like when they met in Berlin, or when the two Russian forces met in Stalingrad.
The United States and the Russian forces were racing each other. They were not meeting up and shaking hands, just so you know.
What are you talking about? In World War II?
Yeah, well, they weren't shooting at each other now, were they?
The United States did meet up, and in fact, there were meetings. The only reason that the Russians took Berlin was because Eisenhower had a deal to allow them to take Berlin. A lot of American commanders were furious that Eisenhower agreed with that.
I know, and we took the Eagle's Nest because of it.
But the Russians were never going to get to the Eagle's Nest anyway.
Yeah.
Easy company. Anyway, sorry. I love Band of Brothers, dude. I really do.
But basically what you have is the Russian forces here in they're meeting up with the British forces, right? The British are now basically in control of these areas. They're forcing back, even though Kut now initially fell or was initially a loss. Now the British, with the help of the Russians, are forcing a withdrawal here all the way back to Baghdad. And at the same time that's all happened, you have Lawrence of Arabia helping the rebels, free the Arabian Peninsula to try and get an attack through here, all right, to create this new Saudi kingdom. And remember, it's the Sharif of Mecca. Mecca has rebelled now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is also, so, okay, the British and the Russian forces meet and they work together. Who is in control of Baghdad at this point? Because it wasn't the Husseins, right?
Well, it's the Turk. Turkey is in control.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, I got you. Sorry, I must have had a brain fart there.
You got to remember, the Ottoman Turks, up until the point where these rebellions happened, all the Arabian Peninsula, this entire thing was all controlled by the Turks. This is all part of the Turkish Empire.
Fair enough. No, seriously, that was my bad. So I apologize. Go ahead, guys.
I was so expecting you to ask whether Saddam has launched any scuds against Israel at this point.
Ha ha ha! I'm not that stupid.
The Turkish army evacuates Asin position and withdraws. All right. Then you have the German attack on Vimy Ridge. Now this is quite interesting because it's this right here. All right. Vimy Ridge is right in this area. All right, Vimy Ridge. This is another battle, and this you got to remember. This is Flanders. This is Wipers. This is the Wiper region. Yeeps or whatever. Yeeps. This is where they're throwing freaking chemical weapons on both sides. They're throwing chemical weapons back and forth at one another. They're just shelling each other along here. Now this is going to eventually develop into the Battle of the Somme, which is a bit further south, but this is what you're looking at. Now you got to also remember the Battle of Verdun is continuing, which is down in this area. But
no, and Verdun is a bloody affair.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll be getting onto that very shortly too.
Okay. Once again, the Sultan of Darfur is defeated by the Sudan, by British forces in the Sudan. Darfur is this area here. It's this area here. And the Sultan is killed. All right. The guy who had rebelled against British rule from the Sudan is gone. Now, we don't talk about this, but there was this prior to World War I, right? You have the British taking of Khartoum, which was a huge event, actually, right? Within the British Empire at that time. In fact, they've done movies about it. The White Feather, I think it's The White Feather. There's an old movie called The White Feather that talks about the British campaign in Khartoum. But we're not talking about, we haven't gotten to that point. The British government notifies the Russian government of their recognition of the Franco-Russian Sykes-Picot Agreement as an eventual partition of Asia Minor, and Russia is not happy. Okay? Russia is like, wait a minute. What about us? You guys are just partitioning, what we call Palestine or the Asia Minor region, and you're not even giving us anything. You're just saying that you're claiming dominance. And
pretty much
part of that is basically the British are taking what's going to become Palestine. The French are going to take Lebanon and Syria. Right, and that's going to be theirs. They're going to allow a free kingdom of Saud. All right, now Saud was supposed to take over everything, including Yemen and so forth. It was supposed to take over the entire peninsula. All right, initially, that's what the thinking was there. Right, so they're already partitioning all these areas, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't the British also weren't they also supposed to get Iraq?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they actually went to them or not yet, but I think they were supposed to get Iraq as well.
Well, you find that they were supposed to, but Iraq and ended up the same way as Egypt. Basically, royalties that were loyal to Britain, but ended up being overthrown later on.
Okay. The Russian forces continue in the Armenian campaign, which once again, we're talking up in here. This is Armenia. You can see where the Russians are continuing their campaigns here, and they're successful.
According to Anna Kasparian,
that doesn't exist. To Nazlan in the frontier east, German East Africa, and that's Rhodesia is now Zimbabwe, right? So they're coming through Tanzania. Tanzania was the enclave of the Germans. This area here.
Well, no, and I want to ask about Armenia. That's a mainly mountainous region, right?
Armenia?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's heavily mountainous. Yeah.
Sorry about the yelling, guys. My apologies. But so it is totally prime real estate for a rebellion, correct?
Well, yeah, but you got to think about what they talk about. Where rebellions take place are where there's cities, right? So if you conquer the city and so forth, then you more or less take it. Armenia, yeah, it's right here. It's very mountainous. The hinterlands can rebel, but really what they're talking about are the cities, like in this area here, that are when they rebel, they have the population to actually.
Is this when the genocide is starting to slow down? Because that started at the beginning of the war.
Right, the Turks are being driven out of this area.
Well, you see, we're going to have to ignore all of this Armenia stuff because Anna Kasparian says that it didn't exist and didn't happen, and she's better than us, remember, so she'd know.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, when the Russians move in, they're moving in with the full support of the Armenian people to save them.
Real quick, on the note of on the note of genocide, I'm gonna have to hop out, guys. There's a call I forgot I had to make.
All right.
Thanks for showing up, Falcon.
All right, thanks. Have a good night.
So yeah.
Okay, so the British advance. The second military act becomes law, which we already discussed what was happening with that. Fort Rupel, the Greek frontier of Macedonia, is occupied by the Bulgarians and the Germans. Remember the Greeks over here that are still trying to figure out whose side they really want to be on? All right. This is now being taken out by the Austro-Hungarians and, of course, the Bulgarians, which are Bulgaria's right here. All right. So they're basically taking all the territory above, all right, Greece. This is why Greece is in a no-win situation. If they side with the Central Powers, all right, that means they're going to incur the wrath of the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians and the Bulgarian alliance, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. If they side with the Bulgarians and the Germans, well, then what will happen to them, and they know this, all right, is that the British and the French will just start seizing land. They'll take Athens, they'll take Sparta, they'll take the entire Peloponnese Peninsula, and there's nothing the Greeks could do to stop them. So no matter whose side, so they're trying to walk a very fine line of,
Can I ask what might be a stupid question?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't they come to the United States and say, guys, we want to be neutral like you? They're trying to force our hand.
All right, the United States were not there to help. You got to remember, the idea that America is an expansionist power is more recent than you realize. We would have said, okay, that's your problem.
Yeah, like I've mentioned this a few times already. That like, yeah, the American attitude at the time was isolationist. You guys would have said to any country that come to you, like, oh, get involved in our shit. Oh, yeah, no, thanks. You can bring us all your poor and your downtrodden and stuff, but leave your shit behind, okay?
Yeah, but that's why I think we would have respected the idea of their neutrality,
We
right?
would have respected it, but we wouldn't have defended it.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I get your point. That's actually a good way to put it. I concede the point, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand what it's a good question, especially considering trying to understand the dynamic which is so different than what it is today. Back then, the United States, and this is something that you have to understand. The United States was considered a third-rate power.
Because you effectively were,
but
really.
we weren't. But we weren't. When
At
we
that
joined
point in
this
time.
war, when we joined this war, we swing it. And don't tell me we don't.
We joined this war. We can't even arm our troops.
Yeah, you're getting show shots from the French. Like, no kidding. Like, no, at this point in time, America is nothing.
For what? 6 months, 40? I mean,
no.
No.
Throughout the war, we fly French planes. We use French artillery.
Yeah. You even use French tanks. Those
are hardly tanks, but yeah, I get your point.
Well, actually, those I think they're called the Renault FT. Well, they were the first actual tank to come out with an actual proper tank layout. Like, it had the driving compartment and the fighting compartment with a turret that had a gun in it that was up on top of the vehicle, and then an engine compartment in the back.
Yeah, but we'll get to the tank moves. We're nowhere near talking about that yet. So.
But basically, what you guys are talking about does lead on to what happens next, and this, why wouldn't the Americans let this mob or defend this mob? That you were talking about just then. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Nobody knew whose side you were going to be on at this point in time, because you're umming and ahhing about whether you're going to side with the British, the French, or the Germans, and, well, okay, so, you're not really going out there saying, hey, Germany, stop being an arsehole or anything like that. So this leads the British into just trying to find intelligence and all this kind of stuff from anywhere and everywhere. And, like, in military intelligence, like, even things like people's holiday photos can actually be of some use. And when you're trying to gauge basically the smell of a population, pretty much, one good way is to, people's letters to and from relatives and shit like that. So yeah, the British were searching mail coming from America. They were searching mail coming from everywhere anyway. But the Yanks found out, and they didn't really like that. But it was a whole thing. We were basically doing it just to try and find out, hang on, is the general population in America, what are they? Are they leaning towards the Germans, or are they leaning towards us? Where's America going to go in this? We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, did you guys actually think, though, that America would get involved? Because I might have wrote 1917. That's my bad. We're still talking 1916.
Well,
There's no idea where America's going to land. It's a flip of a coin, right?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, we don't even know if you're going to join. Because you guys have the luxury of being so far away and say, hey, it is absolutely not our problem to everybody. And at the same time, we're trying to get you guys on our side. The Germans are still doing the same thing as well. They're saying, hey, America, deal with us. Fuck the British.
Well, no, and the thing is also, think about this aspect. When you look at America at the time, this is before the 20s boom and the crash. We're looking at the teens. So America the economy's starting to pick up, and we're starting to do all right. And the real thing is also, man, we had such a mixed bag of population. You really couldn't judge where we were going to land. There was no way to do so. There's whole states that are full of German population.
Yep.
There's New England that's English. Seriously, we call it New England for a goddamn reason, dude.
And also, Matt Dodge, there are whole areas of the country where English is not the primary language. Pennsylvania, for a long time, people almost exclusively spoke Dutch.
Yeah, no, you have a point. And the thing is, wherever we landed, okay, let me put it in a way you might understand. Swing states and elections nowadays in the United States. The U.S. itself was a swing vote. You get what I'm saying?
Hmm. Yeah, well, just getting onto your industrial prowess at the time and all this kind of stuff. Like at this point in time, America didn't have all the industry and all this kind of stuff. What they did have was a gigantic population completely unencumbered by war or economic bullshit, and you got basically three superpowers throwing you shit tons of money to supply their war efforts. So now you've got this massive influx of fundage, a giant population that's basically doing nothing, all the resources and shit in the world to start up all the industry you want, and the ability to actually fucking swing that into practice right then and there on a spot. And when I'm talking about the influx of money, we're talking about Thompson submachine guns would cost about $200 at that time. That's a few $1,000s nowadays in our money, and that wasn't like no lend-lease bullshit at that point in time. No, that was being paid for with gold bullion. All right, so that was hard currency. So you guys were getting all of that, and that's the reason why by World War II, as soon as you flicked on the industry switch, fucking you were throwing shit out so fast it wasn't funny. Is because this is the
right. But
World
World War One, our involvement up to World War One, we are not the industrial powerhouse that we're going to become. Industry.
We did have agriculture.
We had a ton of agriculture, obviously, and we do have industry. I'm not going to say we don't have industry, but it's not what it's going to be. It is just ramping up at this point.
And it has the ability to ramp up at such a stupid fast rate. It's not funny.
Well,
yeah, no, that's why
Japan
in World War II, you know, they say they awoke a sleeping giant. That's what they did.
But World War One, prior to World War one thing we didn't have that Farty does mention in World War II that we have is we don't have the population base yet. It's getting there, all right. But prior to World War One, still most people lived on farms. Most of the nation, you had people living on farms. It's after World War One that you start seeing more people not living on farms and living in the, on these larger cities and urban areas. And of course, the influx, the immigration is having an effect in that regard as well.
How many Americans by this point are joining the French Foreign Legion? Because there was a lot of pilots that were Americans.
Well, there were pilots that were American, but that was because it was considered a glamorous thing, and it continues even after the war. The aeroplane is considered glamorous.
It does. It continues to be glamorous even into the 1930s, mostly through the U.S. Army Air Corps, and it really doesn't start to die down in glamour until the 60s.
And with the French Foreign Legion, it's going to be almost impossible to figure out how many Americans are actually in there at the time, because if they survived and they reached their discharge, they typically get a new identity and a new nationality and all this kind of stuff anyway, so effectively they're not Americans anymore.
No, yeah, you're right.
Really? Is that how that works? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of the incentive. That's why, like, the old adage was it was all for criminals and cutthroats and people who just wanted to get away from something in their life or something like that. And that was the deal. You come fight for France, you risk your life for us, and we'll do you a solid, set you up with a brand new life afterwards.
Is that still the deal?
Yeah.
New
Interesting.
name, new passport, new life entirely. Your old past is erased.
It's a clean slate.
Wife, I'm gonna go join the French Foreign Legion.
I wouldn't, because with all of their prowess and their bullshit, they sure do fucking lose a lot of fucking battles. I mean, almost all of them, pretty much.
Basically, they have a tendency to die.
Following orders in the U.S. military.
Yes, at
French
least the US
invasion, they'll probably
military.
just pull out a gun and shoot you.
Yes, at least the US military has a
like, could my
retreat.
name be something cool, like, I don't know, what's a cool French name?
Well, here's one thing I reckon is going to be a deal breaker for you, Dodge. You've also got to learn French because they don't speak English.
What? That's
Yeah.
not
That's
cool.
all right.
I pressed
That's all
one.
right.
I pressed
No, that's all
one.
right. No, that's all right. No, they teach you. They teach you as a part of your recruit training.
Yeah.
But,
They teach you by saying if you don't understand us and you fail to do something, they beat you. It's a real
Okay, wife, never mind. I'm staying home.
Yeah, I
All
thought
right.
that'd be a deal
We
breaker.
have May 29th. You have the agreement that is actually signed between the British and the Germans on the prisoner of war. And then on May 31st,
Here we
we're gonna
go.
talk about the Battle of Jutland. Okay, now Jutland, for all intents and purposes, has two major phases. Okay, and what it is, it's the Germans are trying to set a trap. Okay.
Oh my God! No! Real quick, MC. I'm sorry. I really am, because I'm totally cutting you off here. I'm sorry, but I'm looking at this battle plan, and all I can think to myself is Gettysburg Day 2. Look at it. You see what I'm saying?
How did I know you'd make a Civil War reference?
Now the Jellicoe, okay, is the one in charge of the British fleet. And the Germans, what they're trying to do is they're trying to take out a significant section of the British fleet, all right, and destroy it, and then run back home to try and even the numbers, all right, between the high seas fleet, the German fleet, all right, and the Grand Fleet, all right, that the British have. Now, the thing that really causes major problems for the Germans is the fact that their radio communications are wide open to the British, and the British know what they're doing. They know this is coming. Okay, this is supposed to be a secret operation where the entire high seas fleet goes out, but the British aren't supposed to know that the entire high fleet is in the ocean.
Well,
And
I gotta stop you.
know it.
Yeah, the British know. I gotta stop you again. How did they get that intel? Spies? Intercepted radio communication? What did they do?
Yep. They switched the frequency over to the Germans and then they listened carefully. That's it. That's how it was.
Are you serious? It was that fucking easy?
They had broken the Admiralties. They had broken the German Admiralties code and were listening in on the high level communication. And what's more is,
oh my God, you limey cunts!
Now what the German high seas fleet were always cognizant that was a possibility. Unlike in World War II, in World War I, the Germans were concerned about signals intelligence and how these things could happen. So they were supposed to have a blackout. Okay, the radio communications were not supposed to go. All right, they were supposed to do this operation without any radio communications whatsoever at the beginning to know when they sailed. Unfortunately, the government, all right, didn't care and were basically informing the Kaiser via radio.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's worse than the cigars in the Civil War. Oh my God.
You have the British the British are looking for the Germans. The Germans are looking for the British. Their battle cruisers first come into contact with each other. And this is what you had. Beatty's battle group comes into contact with Hipper's battle group. And he goes in for the attack.
Now, just real quick, right at this point, note these are battle cruisers. They're not battleships and they're not dreadnoughts. Now, the difference between a battle cruiser, a battleship, and a dreadnought is that a cruiser is lightly armored and it's got medium caliber guns in relation to your naval rifles. Well, your battle cruiser is
40. Are we talking 50 millimeter? What are we talking about?
We're talking about 10-inch guns at this point, 10 and 11-inch guns. Now, your battle cruiser is basically a cruiser, so it's a light, fast, lightly armored ship, but it's got gigantic fucking guns on it. So now we're talking 14, 15 inches here. So the whole idea of them is that they're designed to go really fast, be really maneuverable, and hit really hard, and then get the hell out really quick.
They got big guns on light ships.
So is this the equivalent of a Corvette or whatever? You know, a quick strike unit, and then it speeds off?
Sort of, kind of, yeah, but it's sort of like, yeah, but we're talking battleship-sized ships here. And the one thing that they're definitely not designed to do is to take a hit.
Yes.
Oh, and the wolf pack, right? The subs.
They're designed. What they're designed to do is to outgun anything except for a battleship and be fast enough to run away from a battleship.
Yep.
What about the wolf pack, though? What about the subs?
That's not for a while. That doesn't come until
the subs. Believe it or not, the Germans had a plan, and it absolutely fails. The Germans. Were their plan was to get their subs in position to know when the Grand Fleet sailed, so that they could at least worry and maybe hit and damage a couple battleships to worry the Grand Fleet. The problem with this is the Grand Fleet. By the time the subs get into position, the Grand Fleet has sailed.
What is sail out of? Manchester? Where?
No. IC's fleet is let's go back to here. The Grand Fleet rather is in Scapa Flow.
Okay.
I want real quick. I just want anyone watching to keep
Grand Fleet is in this area here. This is Scapa Flow.
Real quick, MC, I just want anyone watching to keep in mind that submarines of this day could do maybe 4 knots submerged. So the only tactic really you could do with a submarine is to get in front, hopefully put yourself in position where you can just submerge and wait for your enemy to come to you.
And what they tried to do was set up a picket line of German subs, which would set up a picket line here. And if they saw the fleet, they were supposed to radio that they saw the fleet, but the fleet has already sailed past them.
So they were watching what? Sea lions? They were watching what? Seals and sea lions?
Waves.
Okay, and the thing with the subs too. Okay, yeah, I get it. They're slow. They're not even diesel level. I get that.
They're diesel electrics.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But the thing is, though, they can run topside, and they can go, what, 15, 20 knots topside?
Yeah.
I mean, they can move.
Yeah, we'll see. That's actually...
They go up to 20 knots, but you got to remember the battleships and the battle cruisers at this time are doing 25 to 30.
And what you've also got to remember too is that the whole term submarine is a bit of a misnomer. They're actually typically submersible boats.
Exactly.
Submarines at that point in time. So yeah, they can run fast on the surface. The only problem is you can see them on the surface, and they're very vulnerable on the surface.
Yes,
exactly. They couldn't maneuver very well.
They have a low drift, right? They are low on the water. They are still think Ironsides from the Civil War, but lower than that. They have a low surface level.
They
not
are
really. The submarines really...
They're harder to detect than like a battleship would be. That's true. Okay.
Well, that's just because they have a very low air draft. But you also have...
But they're trying to use them as scouts, and that was always a disaster. Go ahead, Falcon. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Keep in mind, there's 2 different hulls for a submarine. You have your outer hull and then your pressure hull. Your outer hull tend to be very thin because they didn't need to be thick. Your pressure hull tended to be a lot thicker because it had to handle many atmospheres of pressure. But if you damage that just a little bit, you won't know that there's a problem and that you're really in trouble until your hull until you start taking on water, because your hull is imploding.
Well, when you submerge though, and you hit pressure depth, it will actually creak, and you'll know. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Scenes like in the movie U-571 where you hear a whole submarine creaking and groaning, and then you see a bolt fly out of like a pressure gauge or something. That actually did happen.
Yeah,
actually, the best fucking example of like hull crush and all this kind of stuff actually was in a comedy movie. It was Down Periscope.
I love that movie. That's what I was
engine
going to bring up. I was totally going to bring that movie up.
The string sag is an actual fucking thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean it is interesting to see what they can go with that. Hopefully, Mad Dog just will reappear here in a little bit. But while he's gone, I can finally get into this battle. Now,
please.
The first thing that happens here, like I said, is the battle cruisers, all right, find each other. And this is, Beatty immediately tries to engage and try and get close enough to where the Germans and Beatty's ships start firing at one another. Beatty, to be honest, makes a number of frickin' mistakes, and not the least of which, he doesn't effectively use his radio communication. And as a result, what you end up happening is several of the British ships actually they're supposed to be firing 1-to-1, meaning where there's a British ship, there's a German ship, and you fire at that. Instead, you have the British totally discombobulated where several of their ships are firing on the same target. Now, this becomes a problem because you start seeing splashes. You don't know if those splashes are from your salvo, all right, or the salvo of the ship ahead of you or the one behind you. If you assume that it's yours and you're trying to adjust fire, you could be all over the friggin' place. All right, you don't know whether or not your ships are hit long or whatever. The Germans do a much better job. Hipper does a much better job in targeting and finding the British ships. And then disaster starts to begin because the British ships start blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up with a series of these battle cruisers going to the bottom of the ocean. All right, look at the fire on this. And then I think they show one for the Lion. The Queen Mary just blows up and then is gone. Just explodes and disappears. Three of the battle cruisers were lost. I'm trying to find the Lion when it gets hit because it goes on fire too. And if they have it, this fire, look how bad that is. If it wasn't for the fact that the crew on that ship actually reacted faster than than what happened on the other ships, the Lion would have sunk with them.
Now, a lot of people don't realize fires spread extremely fast aboard ship. The best thing you can do on a ship, as far as the captain is concerned, is stop. Just because going faster, you're more likely to spread the fire, and also fire is still a giant problem today. It kills more people than about anything else.
Well, what is the procedure during war? Your ship is going down. You abandon ship.
Well, right. When the ship blows apart in half, you don't even get that chance.
No, I get that, but I'm saying if you were able to abandon ship, does the enemy capture you, or do they let you go because you're a non-combatant at this point? What is the procedure?
There's lots of different circumstances that arise from that. Like, okay, if we're talking about like your Wolfpack fucking submarine things, they typically were supposed to pick up survivors and then put them at a safe port. Now, if you're talking about in the midst of a battle here, now, depending on the circumstance, right, you might get the call to abandon ship, or it might be a certain circumstance where everybody who could give that command is now dead and it's now every man for himself. But once the command to abandon ship is given, basically it is every man for himself. Just get the fuck off as fast as you can. But here, you, like MC said, most of the time these people were completely robbed of this fact because, as I mentioned, these battle cruisers were definitely not designed to take a hit. And typically when they did take a hit, it'd hit something really sensitive like a magazine. And when you detonated a magazine on something like that, that's basically you're vaporizing the ship.
Right. Now, one of the biggest differences between the Germans and the British ships at this point was the British believed in overloading the ships. They sailed with far more ammo than they were initially designed for, just in case. Okay, so they
optimistic as hell.
They had the powder casings literally stored all over the place, rather than in their normal arms rooms, as well as in their arms room.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, one of the things there's two things that are happening here. All right. The German.
All right. Who lost who?
I think I think we lost MC for a second.
Yeah, I thought it was me. Yeah, you're back. I thought it was me, to be honest. So yeah.
What you see coming down here is you see the initial engagement where Beatty is trying to engage, and he's starting to realize, I'm getting the shit kicked out of us. We have a problem with our ships. That's when he makes his famous comment. I believe we have something wrong with our bloody ships today. All right. Right here, though, he sees the German battle fleet. He also knows that the Grand Fleet has sailed. So he turns around to try and drag the entire fleet under sheer, right, out into the second phase of the battle, which is where Jellicoe is. And it proceeds into this. Now, Jellicoe does a number of just awesome things.
Oh, no. Oh, no. The British are blue, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Oh,
now,
no.
what you have happen here is the British come over to here and then spot the German fleet. And Jellicoe orders, you see how all these ships are in line here? Right? All these are lines. You have about 5 ships in each one of these lines. Okay? What he does is he orders them into a single line to try and cross this German T here.
Oh, he shoves right through the fucking center.
Well,
wow.
Actually, he's actually trying to cut him off from the front, and he's trying to get basically every single dreadnought and battleship and heavy cruiser and all this kind of stuff to do a full broadside.
Well, no, and here's the thing, though. If this fails, this is the destruction of the British fleet, right?
If he didn't pull it off, it could have been a disaster. But his ships, nothing happens. Yes, some ships come close to colliding, but overall, they pull this maneuver off like champs, and make a nice long line and open fire on the Germans.
See, literally all you could see apparently from eyewitness reports was when they first saw the British, all they could see was nothing but battleships on the horizon. Like from one side of the horizon to the other was nothing but fucking grey ships. And then when they all opened up, it was like the horizon caught fire, they said.
And
essentially they were screwed.
No, that is impressive. But it's also like moxie. Right? Isn't that the word for it? Because this is do or die time, right?
It's a phenomenal show, okay, of seamanship. And like I said, they pull it off perfectly. And in fact, this area here was part of the battleship squadron, actually joins the back of this line. They have completely unified. Now, Scheer initially is like, okay, we're going to take him on, and then he realizes we're screwed, right? And he orders.
Mein Scheiße, the horizon is on fire. Ah, fuck, we get out of here.
He orders a 180 for all of his ships.
Oh my God, he tucked tail and ran.
Hang on. There's
ships to perform an individual 180.
Yeah, because this wasn't like fucking come up to this point and then turn around in like one big long line. This was like stop where you are, turn around and go. Like
run, nigga, run.
It's basically a situation of every ship for themselves.
Well, no, because he's got control of the fleet. He maintains control of the fleet, but he orders them all to do an immediate turn, and they respond with ultimate, massive skill and seamanship, and none of them wreck. And they actually start pulling away. And at this point, they can make it back. And then for some reason, he orders them to turn around again and re-engage the fleet.
Oh no!
Can't make up his mind.
Dude, no, he took a shot of vodka and he's like, "Let's do this."
well, you also got to remember too. By this stage, he's sunk a few ships and he's damaged quite a few more. He's actually doing pretty good at this point. So maybe turn it around and have another swing at them. It's not really that bad idea.
Yeah, but he's now facing battleships.
Yeah, but that's the thing. But this is the thing, though.
He was drunk. He was drunk.
She didn't know that they were battle cruisers. He thought that he copped a few dreadnoughts.
That's very possible. But this everyone, there's no explanation anybody can give, and Shear dies before he can explain why he turned around again. Right?
When did he die? Like in this battle?
No. He lives through this battle. Believe it or not, he lives through this battle. Yeah. And he actually ends up doing the same thing he previously did after getting a number of his ships sunk. Okay, and he orders the pullback. Now, what happens here is it's getting dark. You can see the time, right? And the British lose sight of the German fleet. And as a result, and trying to find them, they actually steam past them. All right?
Oh my God. Wait, no, stop. They go past them. Yeah. The line to London is open, right?
Well, if you're thinking about going down there and shelling the holy crap out of the coastline of the British, could they have done that?
Yeah.
They
That's what I would have done, dude. I would have sailed up. I would have sailed up the Thames and sacked fucking London.
Well, then you're completely surrounded.
Yeah, but what you've actually got here, though, Dodge, is you've got a superior force that has now cut you off from your home base.
Yes. And you just wasted your shells shelling a land that you possibly can't hold.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do?
Without any ammo.
Well, what? Okay. Falcon asked me, "What do you do?" What do you do?
I mean, what
you put the fear of God into the British. That's what you did.
Mad Dodge. What I mean is, what did you do? What was the end effect of it? You put a bunch of ships in a tight area, and you're completely surrounded. You just handed them a victory. Yeah, you're gonna scare them, but in the grand scheme of things, what did you really do?
Yeah, well, I know hindsight's 2020, so I'm cheating here. But what does the Grand Fleet do after this? They get holed up and they do nothing. So why not shell London?
The high seas. Yes, it does eventually hole up again, but at the same time, it prevents the Grand Fleet from leaving Scapa Flow. As bad as this is,
you're right. It does hold the British. You're right. It is the holding position. You have a point, sir.
Well, just one thing on your little thing, fucking you're shelling London, putting the fear of God and all this. Yeah, well, that might be all scary and shit right up until the point you run out of ammunition, then you're not better scary as a little kitten.
What could they do, though, if the Germans sailed up the Thames? Because you could sail up the Thames, my friend. You can.
What the British do, let you sail up the Thames, launch a bunch of barrages, and while you're doing that, go behind and replant mines and barriers for you to try and sail out of the Thames.
Yeah, we just wait for you to come out.
That is a fair point, sir. Okay.
Sure, you can shell London. They're willing to lose a few civilians. The British. It's not like the British don't understand this tactic. It's been used on them before.
Yeah, no, that's why 7-7 was a pointless fucking thing. Like you bombed London. Yeah, well, what did you expect was going to happen then, dickhead? The best option would be to just sit outside the Thames and wait for you to come back out. I mean, you're going to go up there and waste all your ammunition, blow a whole bunch of shit up. There's no point us going in there and adding to that. Let's just wait until you run out of ammunition and come out, and we'll just fucking plug you in the head.
Well, no, that's a very good point. I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I'm just saying from the German perspective, their whole fleet gets locked up anyway. Why not cause a little destruction and raise some cane?
The reality is that the reason their whole fleet gets locked up has to do less with the it has to do with politics. The Kaiser does it to them. Okay, and that was always an issue. Okay, the Kaiser's interference with the ships. This was his pride and joy. Okay, he did not want the Kriegsmarine to be hurt and harmed. And the reality is that Scheer and the other admiralties, Hipper, they all understood you're going to have to use these ships or lose them. They were all willing to go out there and fight the British fleet. They were going to teach they wanted to do a lot of things.
Here's a real question. MC and Farty, both of you. MC first, then Farty. You guys, if the Germans sent out the fleet and went toe-to-toe, yes, they probably would have lost. But how much damage would they have caused? Go ahead, sirs.
If they had done it at the beginning of the war, they probably could have caused quite a bit. They still would have lost their fleet. When you start taking a look at how are they going to rebuild it, they weren't going to be able to rebuild it from capital ships, but they could have put a lot more than in the submarines, and the sub campaign would have continued. It could have been possibly more successful. But the reality is it would have bloodied the nose of the British, but it wouldn't have beaten them.
Okay, right. Well, in respect of shelling London, that's a pointless task because, well, yeah, you've still got an entire battle fleet sitting there waiting for you. What would have more of a point would be to try and take out as many of the British ships as you can. If you're going to have that big battle, have it with the British's offensive, and you try and take out as many of the newer dreadnoughts that you can, because like I've mentioned this before, that Germany only had to keep up with Britain once Britain started making turbine-powered battleships. So, and that's exactly what they did. They basically kept up with Britain. By World War One, they figured they had a fleet strong enough to take on the British. Now, having said that, Britain and Germany have an equal fleet of turbine-powered battleships. Now, Britain's still got all of their old battleships and stuff like that. They're slow as fuck. They've still got big guns and they still carry lots of armor and all this kind of stuff. So there's still that Germany needs to contend with. So realistically, trying to come out and taking a swing and seeing how far you can get in a battle like this, and then running home and trying to preserve your fleet for maybe something a bit more useful later on down the track, like maybe trying to pick the British off one by one later on, would be more of a better idea, because at least in that way you still retain your fleet.
I'll add this, and then I'll let Falcon go here. You guys, what if when the British fleet lost track of them and passed them, they broke out and started to harass the Atlantic? Wouldn't that have been the better move?
They couldn't go that far. You got to remember that you're not talking 1940 type of ships where they had that kind of distance that they can do. Where were they going to come back to? You got to remember they had to come back.
But once again, the British just have to wait.
No, you have a good point, and the Americans were no longer going to let them try and resupply at our ports.
No, the British were going to allow us to do that. Yeah.
and then you also had the added thing of these ships weren't all the one class, so you had differing performances and differing ranges, and the potential of you either had ships coming in dribs and drabs, which will be easily picked off by the British, or you have to bring the entire fleet back in one hit just for security, which you still risk losing everything.
Could they take a territory like Greenland or Iceland and then have a jump-off point? There's coal there, right?
Well, okay, you gotta take it. You gotta be able to hold it, And the reality is you're far away from any kind of you have no maintenance capabilities. You have no way of resupplying food.
Yep.
Okay, food is always a big issue on ships. You know.
Then there's
So
like
they were really in a no-win situation, right?
yeah, well, yeah. There might also be coal there too, but there's no industry at this point in time to retrieve the coal, so you got to set all that shit up and protect that as well.
And after the
Exactly.
battle, I think we have to talk about the results of this. All right, because both sides claimed victory. All right, and the way they did it was more British sailors died than German sailors, and that's true. Okay. But the reality is that the British had prevented the high seas fleet from breaking out or actually, doing any kind of real damage. So from that standpoint, you have to look at it from the standpoint of the British, which is the British won simply because strategically they maintained their superior posture. But what was strange about this is Beatty, in a lot of ways, backdoors Jellicoe. All right, and basically blames not killing the entire high seas fleet when he had the chance on Jellicoe when Jellicoe was doing the best that he could, and he did a remarkable job to start with. It was really an unfair thing. Now, the British populace was expecting, okay, the grand battle took place, but it wasn't Trafalgar. It wasn't this grand victory. Well, okay, but you're not dealing with the freaking French. Okay, you're dealing with the Germans. And the Germans had let's be honest, the German warships, one by one, the German warships were better than the British. I firmly believe that. On a one-to-one basis, the British ships were not nearly as effective as the German ships were.
Well, of course, they were designed to go toe-to-toe specifically with the British. Why just have something that is adequate? Why not make it better?
But the British had overwhelming power. They really did have overwhelming power.
80-20 rule. Why have something that does 100% of what you do when I can have something that does 80%, but I only have to put 20% of the effort into it?
Yeah, well, and it was very successful. Jellicoe is, like I said, Beatty really is a dirtbag as far as I'm concerned when it comes to this battle. He really overinflates his own heroism, right? He doesn't talk about his, in many ways, his sloppy performance, because I really think it's sloppy. Okay, if you study his initial engagement with Hipper, he lets Hipper open fire first. That never should have happened because his guns outranged Hipper's.
Well, isn't that the British thing though? Like, it's the gentleman's war at this point still, right? And what's up, Moondog? I see you in the chat. How you doing, buddy? Dude, that Dodger game was bullshit, and we're not going to talk about baseball until next year. So it is what it is. But yeah, the British, they were going on the gentleman's arrangement, right? When it came to war.
Well, for the most part, yeah, but not specifically right at this specific instance that we're talking about. Like, yeah, the whole point of this is that they're going to punch the fuck out of each other. There's nothing gentlemanly about this. This was supposed to be like the basically the battle of all battles. Really, this was going to be like the fucking gigantic battleship, fucking big melee. This was going to be something fucking huge. Like nothing is ever going to be like this. Is going to be so fucking big.
Well, no, and it kind of was the way the British set it up when they repositioned. They hit and put it into a perspective I personally understand. They succeeded where the Confederates failed. They took Little Round Top. You know what I mean? MC knows what I'm saying, right?
Well, the thing of it is, for the way that this was supposed to be, like how massive this was supposed to be, from what actually ended up happening, it was really a letdown.
Yeah.
Look at that battle plan, MC. You know what I'm saying? Like
I do. I do. I mean, but the thing is what the populace was expecting and what the populace got were two different things.
Mm.
And there was an expectation. You got to remember, their idea was that the British Navy, for all intents and purposes, was absolutely invincible.
But it's not. Nothing is invincible. The United States Navy in 2019 is not invincible. We can
People's
be beat.
views of these kind of things carry on to this day. I mean, we had, for example, one of our stealth fighters taken down in
Serbia.
In Serbia.
Yeah. We can be beat. We are not.
Well, yeah, but the reason was because the pilot thought he was invincible. He did not follow orders. All right. In fact, he violated his orders. All right, and went to a place and through a place he was forbidden to do, and he said and he did it anyway, thinking he was invulnerable.
Yeah, and he was supposed to have some prowlers with him to jam the signals.
Well, no, it's avarice. It's the idea. It's the golden wings. You know what I mean? Or is it wax wings? Whatever. He flew too high and they melted and he fell to the ground.
And that's Icarus you're thinking of?
Icarus, yes.
But that's the United States of America circa 2019, and that is the British Empire circa 1916, right?
Sort of. Yeah, we're starting to get into the downfalls of the British Empire. This is where it starts to fall because, like I said, when they had to buy Tommy guns, they were paying like $200 in gold bullion. So that was money that they had to actually scrounge up at the time. And this did leave them in a bit of a financial downturn, especially through the 20s, and like the depression didn't help.
Well,
and
yeah,
before they could recover, then fucking World War II happens, and then literally by the end of that, the British are paying America back until like the 1990s.
Yeah, 93, I believe, right? Didn't they settle their debt in 93? Or was it 94?
Something like that. It's around there.
At least the British settled it.
Oh, absolutely. And the reason I was going to cut you off, Farty, is that is the exact same conversation I had with Cabby when he was still alive. So I was going to bring that up because Cabby says that almost verbatim is what he said. He's like, World War I is when it started, but World War II, we just went into uber debt with the U.S., but motherfuckers, we paid you back, is how he put it to me. And MC, I think you were on that live stream, right? You heard him say that.
Yeah.
Well, you got to sort of understand where, Cabby's sort of attitude with that is, because he lived through all of that. He still had to have the rationing after the war, because that continued on like up till the 50s. And then the economic struggles that they had through the 60s, the 70s, and especially the 80s. And it wasn't until Thatcher came along and then she actually started like saying, right, nah, we've really got to start tightening our belts and just suck it right the fuck up and get ourselves out of this debt, and really started paying shit off. Everyone was bad-mouthing her at the time and all this kind of stuff, but she was one of these politicians that was setting things up for 30, 40 years in the future. And like a lot of people are actually starting to see the benefits of what she did back then now.
Yeah, no, I'm actually a fan of Thatcher. A lot of people hate her. I'm not one of them. I like Margaret Thatcher.
Best part about Margaret Thatcher was when the fucking Argentines took the Falklands. She did everything correctly. She sat down with all of her military advisors, the generals and the fucking admirals and the air chiefs and staff and all that shit. Said, right, what do I do? And they went, you do this, and you must do it by this time. And she went ahead and did it. Didn't fucking argue.
Yeah, no, I have the utmost respect for Margaret Thatcher. And a lot of people don't. Especially a lot of Americans, right, MC?
Well, I think more Americans have a better view of, or a more positive view of Thatcher than many British do, actually.
Yeah, well, that's mainly because you guys didn't have to go through a lot of the shortages and shit. Like, there was this big thing about, it used to be government funded that they give you milk in schools, and she stopped that because, well, the government couldn't afford it. And then there was the big cry was, oh, they're taking milk out of our babies' mouths and stuff like that.
Yeah, there was also the fact that she tried to institute a poll tax, which was an absolute dumb idea. That idea of Thatcher's was just stupid.
Oh, well, she wasn't perfect.
No, yeah, exactly. She wasn't perfect. Yeah.
A poll tax, where they basically said, you're a British citizen, you owe this money.
It's like our income tax.
No.
Right?
It's not.
No.
It's you are a British citizen, you will pay this amount, period.
No shit?
Mm-hmm.
No shit. They count people. There's 6 people here. Here's what this household owes.
Oh, dude, I would have bitch slapped her. Yeah, no, I'm not paying dick.
It was like a Robin Hood tax, the tax that you see the sheriff of Nottingham doing to the
Yeah, no, and I'd slap him with 8 inches right across his face. Yeah. Fuck you. Yeah.
But it was kind of a thing that they really sort of had to entertain that kind of an idea and shit because, well, like I said, they were in financial trouble.
Well, yeah, they were. There was a lot of disasters that had happened. I think wasn't Margaret Thatcher the one that stood up there and actually sold off the oil industry?
I think so.
All right, and that was really, I mean, people bitch about it to this day, but the way the government was managing it at that time, they were losing money hand over fist. All right, with the way that was being managed by the government, it had to go private. And the same thing was true of their rail industry and some of their other things.
Yeah, well, we had to do the same thing out here too. Like there was a lot of industry that, like our telecommunications used to be government run and used to be called Telecom. Now it's called Telstra, and that's been sold to the public 3 times, and the dumb fucks have bought it 3 times. That was all because the government had fucking just fucked the funds and put us into debt, and the only way that we could get us out of it was to sell our public utilities.
Well, no, and it's funny. I always wondered why I had to pay extra for BBC America, right? And then I started hanging out with British people, and they're like, we have a TV license. I'm like, what? Like, what the fuck is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
it does not compute.
Yeah, no, a TV license is only for all of those British people who don't know that fucking Putlocker exists.
Well, and there's the internet.
But we're hitting the 2-hour mark. I think you're right. I think June and July will be next week. So finish off the 31st, MC.
Well, actually, you're going to have to finish off on the 1st of June, or else we're going to leave this on a cliffhanger.
Oh, you're right. You're right. So we will go to the 1st of June at least. Good. Yeah, good call.
Yeah. Well, which is the finish of the Battle of Jutland. But you have the Mama Khautin, all right, retaken by the Turkish forces. Basically, it's the fight in Armenia, the Armenian area. The
Mama Khatun.
Okay, thank you. The Entente government's protest to Greece against Bulgaria's occupation of Fort Rupel. Okay. Well, that's great.
Is it pronounced Entente or Entente?
Entente.
Entente. The Entente government, basically the British and the French are protesting that the Greeks are letting Fort Rupert be occupied by the Bulgarians. The thing is, what did you expect Greece to do? I mean, honestly.
Well, no, and it's kind of a reoccurring theme so far in 1916. They're shoving Greece around like they are the fucking high school bully.
Well, when your army wears dresses, what do you think's going to happen?
What?
Yeah, that's the Greek army uniform. It's a white baby doll dress with funny little shoes with curly little ends on them and little puffy little fucking puffballs on the end of it.
It has to be a joke. It looks so comical. It has to be a joke.
I am not shitting. No. Hang on.
No, you have to be kidding me right now. There is no way they have an army of fairies. Because MC would have killed them already.
No, ground them alive, or and run them through a coal-fired power plant.
Okay. Save image as. Hang on. Okay, now, how do I fucking share this?
You share it and then I add it to the stream. I'll remove MC's screen. There you go. Now throw your screen up and I'll add it.
Share.
Click on share screen.
Okay, now.
Chrome tab, and then you click which tab. It's actually pretty simple. I really like StreamYards.
My browser
Seriously,
has me fucking
doing
blocked.
Oh.
Hang on, I'll put it in Discord.
Okay, I can share Discord. And sorry, my dog's a dick.
Just put it in Discord and I'll pull it up.
Download.
Put it in general in Discord.
Come on.
I'm gonna beat this fucking chihuahua senseless. I swear.
It's a chihuahua?
He's like a chihuahua. He's half chihuahua, half douchebag.
I don't know if anything's gonna open. I'll try and open this. I don't know if this thing's gonna open or not.
Fucking. Why is this being
Hold
fucking...
on a second. I'll see if I can bring it up now. Give me a second here.
It should open after you download it. He uploaded it as
Here, I got
a
it.
downloadable attachment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me share this now. Get back to StreamYard. Share my screen. There.
There we go, two cunts in the foreground.
Nuh-uh. No.
Yeah.
That has to be a joke.
That
This
is not a joke.
No, this is the same Greece that had Sparta.
Yep.
Tell me they've updated their uniform.
Well, they've updated it now. Yes, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, they're camouflage skirts now.
Were they seriously? Were they expected to be able to fight in that?
I was so kind of expecting that their enemies would just die laughing.
You must be getting that from Monty Python.
No, I swear to God, I'm in a state of shock. What the fuck was that?
That's early, Mad Dog, just early stage joke warfare.
MK Ultra. I got you. Okay.
No, I was referring to Monty Python.
No. You see, it's actually psychological warfare. See, the Greeks are wearing the dresses, and they're like, "Yeah, you're coming over here, and we're gonna fuck you Greek style." Don't let the dress fool you, sunshine. You're gonna be the bitch.
Instead of shooting, they just wink. Hey, big boy.
No wonder so many men in the Greek army are gay.
Oh my God!
I got a feeling that today they just all go trans.
There's a reason they call it Spartan.
Oh wow. Okay, so yeah, there's that. That was odd.
So now you know why everyone's pushing Greece around.
Yeah, fuck them, right? Like, what the hell? Even the Americans who, like, wash their hands of this shit, we're like, you're fucking gay.
Yeah, well, maybe if they invested in pants, people would take them seriously.
Right? Like, you're not Scottish. You're not Scottish. You can't pull this off.
And even then, the Scots, we make skirt jokes at them.
Well, that's the thing, you see. They must have looked at the Scots and went, well, if everyone's scared shitless of the Scots, we'll do it too. And then they come out in their faggy little dresses and they do the Scottish thing and fucking show everyone their doodle, but all we can see is just this tiny little black thatch of fucking hair. Because Greeks are hairy cunts, remember? Okay, so it wasn't funny.
Okay, and basically that's the end of June, and then you have the end of the Battle of Jutland, where the high seas fleets makes it back, which we've already discussed. So, I think June, July will be the next installment.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mad Dodge, are you still there?
Space please.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
There we
here.
go.
My daughter was talking to me. Oh, so hey, how about you back away from my mic, please? Thank you. All right. So the last event we want to talk about is the conclusion of the sea battle. When I'm looking at that map, I'm telling you, Gettysburg, Day 2, Robert E. Lee, Little Round Top. All right, that's what I see. And the Germans failed just like Lee did, right?
Well, the Germans got lucky. The Germans, when they turned back again and had their T crossed again, which basically meant that the entire broadsides of the British could be brought to bear. The fact is that they probably should have destroyed even more of the German ships than they did.
Mm.
Okay, the British had, I mean, from a masterful sea tactic, had basically gotten what is a dream of all commanders in a fleet action, which is crossing the enemy's T, right, where they can only fire the lead ship can only fire straight ahead, while your ships can broadside the holy crap out of the entire line.
Yeah.
So, from that standpoint, okay, the Germans were extraordinarily lucky to even get back home, and that's where, when the British lost sight of them, they actually steamed past them, and they were actually able to go around them to get back to their base, instead of being cut off from their base because they lost sight of them.
I gotta cut you off. When they went past them, did they have people up in the rigging? Did they know they were passing the British troops? If they did, it was night, so they didn't. Okay, because I was gonna say, if they did, why did they not attack from the rear? You know what I mean? Like, come on. The British fleet is sitting there, unaware of your presence. That is the perfect time.
You would have had to get extraordinarily close to the enemy, all right, to fire in a night action. In a night action, is you don't have radar. Understand this. And if there's no moon out, when you're firing back and forth, you can't even tell where your splashes are landing.
Now, actually, while we're quickly on this little point, yes, searchlight battles did happen.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the Germans should have attacked from the rear. The British were unaware. They thought that they had the Germans, and the Germans were able to sneak right past them. What does that tell me? That they could have snuck up on the rear and flanked them. You can flank them at that point.
In a battle like that.
Am I thinking in ground force terms? Is that the problem here?
Yeah, because there's different options at sea. Not the least of which is the British ships were they were where they were, but they're also a lot faster. Well, I shouldn't say a lot faster. They had comparable speed to a point, but all they would have had to do was start to steam away and then line up again, and they would have been crossing the German T again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm thinking in ground troops terms here. That's
quick,
my
Matt
bad.
Dodge. What y'all were saying a minute ago about sailing at night. I know I was only on a 40-foot sailboat, but still, with a solid overcast, the furthest I could see was my bowsprit. Past that, it was just black in all directions.
Yeah.
But with a good moon, with a full moon and no clouds, you can see it clear, almost as clear as day.
Okay, no, and if I'm thinking in ground troops terms, fair enough. Because really, looking at the layout, a flanking maneuver from the southeast, where you swoop up the line and broadside, sounds like a great fucking maneuver to wipe out the fleet of the high seas.
Well, yeah, it sounds great in hindsight and all this kind of stuff, but yeah, when you actually put it to like the conditions of the day and all that kind of stuff, it's not really straightforward.
No, and you're right. Absolutely. So,
And you could also probably, help by learning, like, what the capabilities of the ships are and all this kind of stuff. Because, like, when you're thinking about tactics and all this kind of shit, how fast everyone can move and, how agile they can be, all comes into it. And if you had an understanding of, like, the capabilities of the battleships at the time, you'd be able to sort of go, oh, right, well, that's where that tactic didn't work.
First off, I see what you're doing there, and I will counter with this. The German fleet was pretty much Corvette class. They had higher maneuverability. They could have flanked down and broadsided from the rear and then moved on at a high rate of speed. Now, the British forces had bigger ships and higher volume of speed because they were bigger and they had bigger engines. And overall, they were better at seamanship. It's the British. You know what I mean?
So where I mentioned to you about learning the types of ships and their capabilities and all that kind of stuff, a Corvette is a very, very small, very, very lightly armed escort ship. It's basically a sub hunter.
I'm saying Corvette as a simple term instead of light cruiser, which is pretty much what they were.
Oh, well, the Germans mainly had big gun battleships and stuff like that. It was mainly the British that had the cruisers and the battle cruisers and the stuff that didn't really like getting blown up.
The Lutzow, I think, was a cruiser. The Rostock and Wiesbaden were battleships.
I was gonna say MC was describing the German. MC was describing the German fleet as small and maneuverable. I'm going off of what you two said.
They were
it was small in numbers. Like, so there was like 30 German ships. There was 50 British ships. That's what he meant by small. As in, like the ships were still big battleships and stuff like that. There's still dreadnoughts and shit like that. There's only just only a few.
I was talking about the numbers involved. The number of British ships versus the number of German ships were it wasn't even comparable. The Germans were way outnumbered, is what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected. I mean, all right, fair enough.
But you're not gonna. I hear what you're trying to say, but it wasn't gonna work out that way. Especially in the technology of that age, there was no way you were gonna sneak up and attack like that.
So you can't do a forest style raid on the high seas.
Not in those days, no.
Well, you could use a hit and run tactic, but it had to be exactly that. You couldn't carry it on for a long period of time. You couldn't hit and run, hit and run, hit and run. It was hit, run back to your base. That was the hit and run.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with you guys, and I'm not getting pissy. I'm just.
Oh well, no, I don't think anybody's saying that you are, Maydodge. We're just explaining it.
No. Like where I was going on is like, you need to know that, like, say the German ships can't go as fast as the British ships, but they're still the same size, still got the same guns and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
You can understand the dimensions and all this kind of stuff and the complexities, and like it's not as easy as running up to someone with a battleship and then doing a U-turn and trying to miss everything in the middle of the night, kind of.
The other thing about this was when you start dealing with this time of the battles at this time frame. It's very important depending on whether or not you're silhouetted or the enemy is silhouetted against the background.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're in position to silhouette you, in other words, they can see you, but you really can't see them. You only know that they're there because you see the flashes of their guns, but they can see the generic outline of your ships and therefore can see where the splashes are happening. They can range on you effectively. You can't range on them effectively.
Well, and here is one final question from me before we wrap up tonight's episode, because it's been pretty much 2 episodes, and we only covered 1 month. So, yay. It was a very productive month.
The Battle of Jutland is an important battle. So, I mean,
oh, no, absolutely. I'm not bitching. I can go for another hour, honestly. But the thing is, the British, why couldn't they run some planes out and drop some bombs?
The aircraft simply, the technology wasn't there. The idea, it sounds great, but the only airplanes that really would be able to actually carry a decent amount of ordnance, first of all, there's nowhere there's nowhere even close enough for them to take off from, because they can't. The aircraft carrier didn't exist yet, and they really couldn't carry enough
southern
ordnance.
England? You're talking what, 60 miles off of the shore of England?
No.
They're not southern.
This is over 200 miles away.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, right. And remember,
my bad.
With your payload, your fuel burn rate skyrockets.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I totally didn't know they were 200 miles away. I thought they were kind of skirting the coastline. But that's my bad. Sorry, guys.
I was going to fucking say something, but yeah, thanks, now I forgot.
Oh, yeah, thanks. You know, it's only my fucking show.
You just asked the bloody question. I only just had the fucking answer for you.
Hey, touche, sir, touche. But no, I really did think they were kind of skirting the British Isles. So I didn't know they were about 200 miles, to the northeast?
Oh, that's right, yeah. Now, also, remember I keep saying that this is a war where a lot of people are learning tactics and all this kind of stuff. Remember, they didn't even try bombing ships with aeroplanes until after World War One, so it really wasn't in anyone's train of thought at that point in time.
Not only that, but the technology to really even halfway begin to do that wouldn't be around for another 10 years.
Yeah.
This is where the Battle of Jutland is, the battle area. This was nowhere near Britain.
No, you're absolutely right. It's totally my bad. You're right. That's my bad.
So, anyway, I just wanted to show so people understand it. They were nowhere. They were nowhere where the British could have gotten. If you're thinking about, even Zeppelins would have had a tough time.
Well, they wouldn't have been able to catch him for a start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is my fuck up. So I'll own that one. Any last thoughts, guys? Because we're at 2:17. Usually we go for an hour on these streams, so we've doubled up.
Yeah.
Oh, now we're into the next hour. We're gonna have to go until 3. So. You know.
Well, you guys can carry it, because unfortunately I'm going to be leaving here pretty soon.
That obsession with having an even number for nice round number. Are you picking things up for me? That's a little autistic.
No. As you probably might have figured out by now, I'm an asshole at the fucking petrol pump. Oh, $6.01.
Oh God, he's the dickhead squeezing the trigger like boop 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 boop. $3,
bitch. He's just anal about those round numbers.
Yeah. Oh, I hate change.
Awesome.
I blame the vaccines.
OCD.
So next week, I believe we'll be doing June and July. The 4th of July. That should be interesting. And yes, I did put 1917 on here. It's 1916. Sorry, guys. My bad. Hey, we all fuck up, right? But yeah, last thoughts. Say goodnight. Don't go to France, motherfuckers. It's horrible.
All right, good night, everybody.
Babies.